Hey guys, so it's another day of school. It is August 22nd. It is a Tuesday, and this was a very eventful Tuesday that made me very angry. So first, when I go to the cafeteria, I notice the little girl. I'm going to call her Kanaya, and she was in the cafeteria walking to her seat. She did the same thing on Friday. She was in the cafeteria walking to her seat. Next thing you know, she froze and broke down crying. Now, this was Friday, and it had to be like August 11th on a Friday. So now we have Tuesday, August 22nd, and she broke down crying again, and she froze as she was walking to her seat. And when she broke down crying this time, I was very shocked, and I was like, okay, why is she crying so badly and so hard? Because she had, her little face was just so upset and frustrated. And a teacher, I want to say Miss Howard, came to hug her because I just wiped her tears and I went to another table because another thing happened at lunch at this other table. And I was upset and I felt really bad about what happened because a teacher yelled at me. And so I went back to her, and I had her glasses because she was crying so much. I took her glasses, I gave her back her glasses, and then I went and I asked her, like, why was she crying? And she pointed, and she used her arm, she pointed to her teacher. And she couldn't say why her teacher made her cry. As well, she is a girl who is ESE special needs. And so she is a lot more sensitive, I know. And she is like, she doesn't like yelling. She doesn't like her teacher yelling at her. And her teacher, this is the third time her teacher made her cry, because her teacher did make her cry, I want to say last week on a Wednesday, but something like that. Could have been Thursday. And it was because the teacher yelled at her about a math assignment, and she just cried. And so, yeah, the teacher has continued to make this kid cry. So, next, what happened at lunch was a boy, let's call him Jolly, because he is a silly boy, and he is usually a happy kid. And so Jolly was sitting at a table with a kid named Collie. Okay, let's call him Kyle. Not Collie, Kyle. And so Kyle offered me one of his snacks. And I'm like, oh, you have an oatmeal bar. And so he offered it to me. And so because he offered it to me, I broke him a piece of a bar that I had. Which, I know this is interesting. A student gave me something of her lunch. She was in kindergarten, and her parents gave her like a dark chocolate cashew almond bar that was untouched. So I get that, and then I'm like, okay, well, I have this dark chocolate cashew almond bar, and I'm gonna give it to Kyle because he gave me a piece of his oatmeal bar. I'm gonna give him my dark chocolate cashew almond bar. And you know what a cashew is, you know what an almond is. It is a nut. So I pass it out to his table, and then Mr. Jolly eats a little piece because the piece I gave his table was like this big. Okay? It was less than an inch big. It was less than an inch thick. Okay? So then they start eating it, and the teacher, Miss Corardi, comes over, and she's like, he's not supposed to be eating that. What are you passing out to them? And she said that he's allergic to peanuts. And I'm like, yeah, well, I gave him this protein bar. And she's just like, well, what are you sharing with them? And he's allergic to peanuts. And I'm like, I don't know if this has nuts in it. And then I look, and I'm like, yeah, this says cashew and almond. This isn't a peanut. And she's like, well, he's allergic to nuts, and this isn't good for him. And then he immediately heard that, and he spit it out. So he never got a chance to swallow it. And yeah, he spit it out immediately. And I'm like, what? And she yelled this out in a loud, aggressive way as well. So, then she's like, he has to go to the nurse. He's probably gonna choke and die, and he has to go to the nurse. And I'm like, I felt so bad. I actually wanted to cry. Because I'm just like, you making him not have any lunch or anything. And so he goes to the nurse and he doesn't even go to recess. And so I'm worried about this kid. And I end up going back to the nurse's office. And I'm like, nurse, is he okay? Did you scan his stomach? Is there any nuts inside of his stomach? Because it was a cashew bar. And she's like, yeah, he's allergic to peanuts. And I'm like, it was a cashew almond bar. And she said, yeah, well, yeah, that's a part of the nut family, so he can be allergic to that. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, did you call his mom? And she's like, yes, she called her, but she couldn't get in contact with his mom. And then she says the mom is going to be all right. She's going to be fine. You don't have to worry about this situation. And I'm like, well, is he sick? Like what happens when he has an allergic reaction? And she said she had a child who had an allergic reaction before, and this child had her neck swell up, and it was very noticeable, and I'm like, okay, so everything is good and I don't have to freak out. That's what I'm thinking. And she says, just remember, everything's good, the child is fine, and just next time, don't share anything with kids. Just don't share anything. That's all she tells me. And she says it slowly. Don't share anything with kids. She says it in this old, slow, old elderly woman voice. And she didn't really look like she cared. She looked like I was annoying her as well. But I'm like, girl, I'm going to ask as many questions as I want. And she's like, were you the one who gave him the bar? And I'm like, yes, I was. And I'm just like, that honestly is not her business. And then I also informed her that he was supposed to eat lunch and that the lunch tables are already being put away, and I'm concerned about him because he didn't get to eat his lunch. And she said, okay, I'll go and I'll let him eat his lunch. And so I go and I'm like, okay. And she says, tell the cafeteria lady that he didn't get his lunch. And I just told the lady, hey, the teacher threw away his lunch and he needs some more lunch. And he had to go to the nurse's office, and the teacher didn't even let him bring his lunch with him to the nurse's office. And yes, she did throw it away. So we need another one. And the lunch lady looks so like, oh my God. She made that face. She didn't say anything. And she's just like, okay, he needs his thing with no cheese. And I'm like, what? He needs it with no cheese? Whatever. And then she's like, why are you giving him strawberry milk? And I'm like, every kid gets strawberry milk when they go to lunch. And she's like, no, he can't have cheese. He can't have dairy. He's allergic. And I'm like, I didn't get any notice about peanuts. I didn't get any notice about dairy. Nothing. And I felt like this was a really big issue because I'm a teaching assistant and I should get a list of these things. Not just some picture posted on a wall that I don't even look at outside of the classroom. And I don't even know if there was a picture saying that the child is allergic to peanuts. Until today, after we had a problem.